It's funny when I listen to this introduction and we say, Sam, we're going to discuss Trap, this brave novel, and it's a brave memoir of a harrowing experience. But we were discussing this, and we've discussed this for a long time. In fact, this book had its genesis in what date?
2010.
2010, when you got back, and I wanted to start there because as harrowing as it is, and as serious as it is, and it is a serious matter, you and I were discussing when you first showed me what would become this manuscript, and you sat down and you said, I'm going to email you a diary of my experiences in London with this. Look, it's hard to describe this guy in terms that are polite, but with the X. And we laughed.
Yeah.
We laughed on the phone. We laughed in Priory. We could not keep a straight face. And why is that?
Well, because not everything was bad. You know, that's what happens is when you're with these amazing, charming people, whether they are psychopaths or sociopaths or narcissists. I don't know enough about the terminology or description of these people, but let's just say it's probably all three. You know, the good times were great. They were incredible, and the bad times were so unbelievable that I often sat there and actually had to write down what he said to me because it was so funny, because it was so wrong, and I couldn't believe anybody thought they had the right to say these things to me. So that formed the basis of the book, was me writing down everything he had said so that I wouldn't forget it, because it was so incredible that I was listening to such rubbish.
Well, I mean, I want to go over that. We live in an age where, as Johnny Depp is learning right now in court, that every bad action can be recorded now. And in your case, not only could it be recorded, but he made no attempt to hide, for instance, the crazy emails, the crazy text messages, the numerous things that he put down in writing for all to see that you could send to people. To say, I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but to say, this is what's happening. Here's a report in his own words, signed by him, an email signature, whatever you want to call it. And yet, when we read it, there's a sense of disbelief. Could we discuss that?
Well, firstly, I don't think he ever thought I was recording it or would email it to anybody, because for him, he was the most incredible man who'd ever walked into my life. And that's what he sold me, because that's what I went to London for. I really thought I'd met the most incredible man who'd ever walked through my door. So as far as he was concerned, he was that. And the reason I got the information on email and text message was because I had to document it to make sure I wasn't going mad. I really thought it was me. I really thought I was just being oversensitive, pathetic, this whining woman who was complaining about the guy coming home late from work, and I had to make sense of it because it wasn't me. I'm not like that. But I just became worse and worse, and when he put things in writing, it was so easy then to reread it or to send it to a cousin of mine who has a lot of experience in psychology and behavioral sciences, and she could then send it back to me and translate exactly. Okay, here he's blaming you for something that has nothing to do with you. Here he's doing this, he's doing that. So for me that was really important. I could actually ask somebody, what do you think? If you don't have it in writing, you're sitting in coffee with your mate and you're complaining about your boyfriend, it sounds so pathetic. Because even though I could remember what was happening, it just didn't sound right or like there was anything really wrong, because he didn't hit me or because it wasn't sexual abuse. You know, verbal abuse is very hard to describe.
I want to just discuss this. The two things that do come through in the discussion is, A, we were originally going to call this novel, this memoir, Psycho Charming. That was its original. I still have the manuscript.
I love
Psycho
that title.
Charming. And I want to discuss the title. Obviously, your publisher, I think, very wisely said possibly the title Psycho Charming has legal implications. Who knows? But I want to discuss why we thought Psycho Charming was such a good title. And what is a charming psycho? Why would you say, this is my ex, he's psycho charming? What is psycho charming?
Well, because firstly he was charming, and at one stage he was standing at the door, you know, very drunk and telling me, everybody loves me, I'm the most incredible guy, you're the only one who says I'm not great. And so he was charming because everybody did think he was great. And the idea of psycho, you know, I didn't know that the real term for psychopath is not somebody who's standing at the end of your bed like with a knife. You know, a psychopath is a very charming, successful, wonderful person to most people. So the idea of psycho-charming kind of made sense because it wasn't all bad. This is what I have to keep on reiterating. I didn't leave sooner because every 3 days everything was fine again. It was wonderful, it was incredible. Life in London couldn't have been better. And then the cycle would start again. But, you know, that eternal hope of that it might all change or it might go back to the story that I was sold in the beginning was still there, the hook was still there. But the term psycho-charming was also quite funny because we abbreviated it to PC. And then in the beginning of the manuscript, I think I still say, bloody hell, this is not Prince Charming, you know. So there was a lot of play on words, which is why I like, and I still do like the title.
So before we get into the rest of this discussion, I want to forward that or highlight that, because if he were to, God forbid, I'd be the first one out the door, you know, but if he were to come here, we wouldn't. I'd hand him my lawyer's card and say I had nothing to do with it. It's all Sam's fault. Meet me at the sushi bar. But if he were to come here, we wouldn't see this as Gollum. This isn't some troglodyte that you dug up at the bottom of Long Street on a drunken night, who was parking your car, it happens, you know, and you had a penchant for the strange guy. This is a person you could bring home to mother. This is a guy who, by all reasonable description, was a very successful and very charming and very nice guy. He's charming enough that you would actually give up your flat in Cape Town and travel all the way to London with your daughter and live with him and trust him and believe that this is, we all know Sam. Sam is not a pushover, you know, in most things. She can be convinced to do things against her better wood, you know, late at night with too much wine. But nonetheless, normally in the cold light of day, we know that this is what you chose to do. Because this is the type of person we're talking about. And I think it's, you know, before we get into this, I don't want to go home and say, yes, Sam chose Mr. Wrong. Anyone could have seen through his act. Because it was hard to see through his act. Is that right?
Well, I'd been introduced to him through somebody I knew. There were a few people that knew him, so that was kind of safety check number one. Number two, I wanted to live in London. I'm on British passport. I wanted my daughter to live there for schooling and to experience it and to possibly get a passport. So I had my reasons for going. I was a bit bored in Cape Town. You know, it was a wonderful opportunity. My second Kids Day book had just been published in the UK. I wanted to explore that opportunity. And it was a break. It was something new, and it was so convincing. I mean, I really was convinced that, you know, this is my lucky thing that had happened to me, and I was sorted and I'd met the person I was going to be with for the rest of my life, and here we go. And I know it was short. I didn't take much time in making the decision. I can take responsibility for all of that, but I'm also somebody who tries things. My friend said to me the other day, I'm climbing Kilimanjaro, come. And I said, I hate walking, no. And 2 weeks later, I booked my flight. So that is what I'm like. I take chances, I look for opportunities in life, and you know, even though it was 6 months of hell, you will read in the book, there were also incredible times that we had in London, and I don't regret it, because you can't regret things. What's the point of that? So that's why I went. I took a chance, Ron.
You took a chance, but
Yeah.
you took a measured chance. You took a wise chance.
What
with
I
someone-
thought.
Which you thought at the time was a
Yeah.
good idea. And I think that I want to discuss now when we turned what were basically your notes, your thoughts, your records of his behavior, your records of your behavior, which you are careful to say you were not an angel, you were not perfect. And we're going to discuss
my
why
behavior is
that's the case.
shocking
Your
in the
behavior
book.
was shocking sometimes, we have to admit this.
You can
But
all
we're gonna
laugh at
discuss
me or
this.
cry for me.
And we'll discuss this, but I think that also we want to discuss, we put this together in a manuscript and it was just you, me, and a small circle of people, and then we started to bring it to the publishing world in Cape Town. And there was an interesting reaction that I'd like to talk about. Not from this publisher, obviously, but from other people who are either in a position to publish it or who presented themselves to us as people in the know. What was their reaction?
Well, I just want to say initially, you put me on to a young editor, Claire. He's sitting in the audience tonight. He was instrumental in giving me the confidence to publish a book because she fed back a lot of information to me, and at one point she said, I'm crying for you, and then I'm crying with laughter. You know, and I'm living this journey with you. It's incredible. So that gave me a lot of inspiration to actually do the book. Maybe if it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't have taken it further. And then it kind of sat on my laptop for a while, then it went further, then nothing happened, and then my kid's decor editor, over a cup of coffee, I was asking her what she did, what other books she was doing, and she said, let me read it, and the next minute it was being published. It was such a weird way of getting a book published. But, so once it was all happening, and then I had a little freak out about my picture being on the cover, and I still don't like the picture, Annika. But
I think it's great.
you know, once it was happening and in the know, I asked a couple of my friends in the industry for a review or advice, and the reaction was really shocking. And these are people two of which are friends who don't live in South Africa anymore, so it's none of you. And the one I've worked with and for since I was 25, and she published hectic stories about women in her magazines to sell her magazines, and she urged me not to publish, and I got such a fright, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in over my head. And then the one friend who lives abroad said, no, don't worry, I'll send you a lawyer, you can get out of it, you can get out of the contract, tell your publisher you're not publishing. And I really got a fright, and I thought, is it that bad? And the biggest thing was, they said to me, why would you want everybody to know this about you? You know, it's not a nice thing. And I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, well, I'm not embarrassed. Why should I be embarrassed? I did nothing wrong. I didn't like the word victim. I didn't think I was a victim. Like today, sitting here, I'm not a victim, but in those 6 months I was. And, you know, it's my diary. I didn't change anything. I could have edited it. I could have taken out the bits about me that were bad, because I am bad in the book. The psychologist report at the end of the book, I never met the psychologist. They wrote the report based on my diary, which I think is important, and also because I don't like what they say. I don't know if it's a man or a woman. I've never Googled the person. I haven't met the person. I don't like what they say about me in one of the 3 scenarios they give. But they call me temporarily insane. And I am in the book. I really am. So I guess these friends of mine were asking, why would you want people to know you in that light? Because you don't come across in the best of light. And yeah, so read the book, and I'm sorry if I offend you.
Well, I mean, I think on that note, just to tease that out a little bit, I think a lot of people felt that there were 2 reactions that I thought that caused the most panic. And when I would get those calls in the office, you know, you would say, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah,
the first
a lot of calls.
A lot of calls. And the first was people would say, you're going to harm your professional and personal reputation, number 1. And then number 2, and I'd like to talk about both of them, was, you know, you're writing a story about abuse, but it's not really abuse. Abuse is you going to the hospital. Abuse is you being raped. This is just a guy who isn't quite as charming as you thought. He's insulting, he sends mean emails, he sends quite a few texts, hundreds and hundreds of texts, and he's still sending them.
Not anymore.
But that's not abuse, was the logic. The logic was, that's not abuse. No one's gonna feel sorry for you, because that's not abuse. And more than that, you are going to risk your professional reputation as a designer and as a person. And what did we say about that?
Well, about risking my professional reputation, I really don't give a shit. It's really, I mean, I'm not head of some advertising agency that some client's gonna, can an account. Yeah, I didn't take any notice of that. The bit about the abuse is difficult because sometimes I say to my friends it wasn't that bad, it was only verbal abuse. But that's taking away from it, and that's saying that verbal abuse is okay. And it's not. Any form of bad-mouthing, being awful and mean and manipulative and, taking somebody for granted is abuse. And the things he said to me was definitely verbal abuse. At the time, I didn't really understand that it was. But once I'd read, and that's why I had to write it down, because you forget these things. So I wrote it down to keep sane and to remember exactly what had happened. But I can say I was in an abusive relationship, and I know that there are women in this room, and there are plenty of other women out there who have it much worse than me. Whatever their circumstance, I can't even comment on it. I don't know how to help them to get out of it. But maybe if they read my book, they'll find some courage. The interesting thing is, while I was telling people the story, and I've told everybody the story. Some of you have said I didn't know. It might have just been, I don't know why, but most of the people know why I went to London and why I came back. I was never embarrassed about the story. But I guess it was sitting on my laptop and maybe it wasn't my story at that time. But I know that once I gave somebody a book to read to get her out of an abusive relationship, and she's in this room. And she read the book and it helped her. So that's why I published, because if my book can help somebody, no matter what their scenario, I can't comment on whether it's verbal abuse is worse than physical, than sexual. Verbal abuse, there are no physical scars, so it's very hard to tell people what the person's saying to you and what the person's doing to you emotionally. And that's why I wrote the book, because maybe this kind of abuse is not given very much limelight or spoken about. Maybe there are a lot of people who just think this kind of relationship's all right, or is okay, or is normal. And what I want to say, it's not. You should never be with somebody who treats you like this or speaks to you like this.
Well, the psychologist, and I thought that was interesting, said, okay, if that's the case, then you could have just left.
Also on verbal abuse, my language back towards him also wasn't okay. I really fell into that trap of being reactive and trying to say things to hurt him or make him understand that this was not okay. So yeah, my behavior in the book's not okay. Sorry, Ron, what did you ask?
So what do you say to somebody who says, well, look, all right, you're getting verbally abused. Why didn't you just leave?
Yeah, that's a point in the book where I got quite angry with the psychologist who summed me up. Because I was in London, so it was a plane ticket to get home. My apartment was rented out. I'd asked my father for help, and he said, no, you got yourself into this, you get yourself out of it. So I really was kind of stuck. And also, I hadn't been working because the agreement was that I went home in September. In December, we were coming back to South Africa on holiday, and I was just going to get my daughter settled and kind of, go to a few interviews and see what I could do in those 3 months. But from January, I'd start looking for real work. So actually, I hadn't been working for 6 months. So although part of the charm and the kind of control was he was paying for most things in London, I was still using some of my money for my daughter and I. But I really didn't have the financial means to come back sooner. That's one of the reasons I didn't come, but I didn't leave. But the other reason is I was still hooked. I was still in love with this idiot. And that's what I want to say. It takes you time. Only once that hook is gone can you leave. Because every 3 days, everything was wonderful, and I was being promised the earth again. And then it would, then those days got less and less, and the drunk days got more and more, and I was just living with a drunk basically. And it took a very long time to get that out of my system, to stop hoping, to stop thinking it would change, or stop believing in the bullshit he was spinning me. He was a great bullshitter. And those stories just kept on coming. And, I kind of thought, well, I'm being too harsh, I'm being too cocky, I am outspoken, so maybe I'm instigating him, and I knew instances I was, just to try and see how bad the reaction would be, because I couldn't think it would get worse. It became a bit of a game.
You said at one point that, in fact, while you were in the middle of it and dealing with the things you're discussing, that you were experiencing what you call temporary insanity. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, when I had to edit the book the first time, I actually got bored. I was like, this woman is just going round and round in circles. It's boring, And that's the trap. That's the cycle you get into. I just found myself whining and complaining and pathetic, really. But, I'd been chipped away at, and there was really nothing left of me. My strong character, all of that had gone out the window. So, and then I started doing really bad things because I was really, really angry. And my anger actually got me through it. I was so angry. And if you read the book, you can see how I do the most horrendous things in that book, which I find quite funny now, some of them. But some of them are really not okay. So yeah, I was insane.
So you're in this insane situation, you're running around with it, and I think that what ultimately happens is, 6 months in an abusive relationship must feel like 6 years, I'd imagine. That certainly sticks with you for a long time. And I think that this idea of being in this insane place, this place where you're not seeing the forest for the trees maybe, or you're not able to identify that actually what's happening to me is so far outside of the norm, outside of what other women are putting up with. And when you listen to you speaking at the very beginning of this discussion, there's this idea that women should be able to put up with it. They should be, that men will be, boys will be boys, and girls just have to kind of deal with it and be strong and not complain. And ultimately, this is a story, I think, about somebody finally saying, actually, I'm allowed to complain. I mean, this book's a major complaint.
Yeah,
but
it's a major complaint.
I guess the question kind of...
It's a major one.
And so when we go back to laughing about it, as we are now, doesn't it seem to you like we're laughing about it because it is ridiculous? When you can look at it from the outside, but inside it's not ridiculous, is it?
Inside, and as I said, it's a diary. And I'm not a writer, I'm an author. Its decor books require captions. They do not require a novel. And my first two, I got somebody to help me, a ghostwriter. So seriously, guys, I'm not a writer. And I know with that book, 50 Shades of Grey, and I mean, there's some very close stories in here. To that book, everybody says it's so badly written, it's so terrible as a book. But everybody read it because it was talking about stuff that maybe nobody had spoken about before. It's a diary of the monotony of being in an abusive relationship where things just never change. And you always think they're going to change, and they just never do. So,
do you think that women, and this is kind of just throwing this out there from the notes that we took, that a lot of women also see a relationship, a functioning relationship, as kind of an achievement? In other words, this is something I've built. I'm not sure if men see it that way. I don't see it that way.
So coming back to the gender thing, I mean, I speak as a, all women and all men because it's my story and I'm a woman, but I know there are plenty of men who've also been in verbally and emotionally abused relationships with women, so it's not that I'm against all men in the room or all men in relationships, it's my story, so it's from a woman's point of view. I think in South Africa as well, there's violence against women and children, and generally, if we can make a broad assumption of how relationships are, and a lot of the time it's about power and money, and the man has the money, the job, and the woman's at home looking after children. So I do think it's got to do with a bit of power and financial. I think if a lot of women had the financial means to leave relationships, maybe they would leave sooner. But also, I think women, from my point of view, are after trying to make this work. Not having a failed relationship, or that word failed is terrible, failed marriage, doing it for the children, making it work. I think that's what keeps a lot of people in bad relationships.
Do you think he ever, if we were to sit him down, do you think he knew he was abusing you?
No, I think if he read the book, he'd go, oh my gosh, that's terrible, I wonder who this guy was. He'd probably say, but you know, she was rather difficult, she probably deserved it. I mean, that's what he'd probably say. No, he had no clue that, look, in the end of the book, and you'll read, there is a bit of an aha moment where all of a sudden he's given up drinking and he's going to the Priory, because you know, all famous people go to the Priory in London, and he's going to buy me a flat and a car, and I must just stay, and you know, I don't have to live with him, and I'm his person. Now he's grabbed onto me and I'm his person, and I'm the only one who can pull him through this. There were glimpses of him understanding what had really happened, and when I did leave, I mean, he was grey, he really looked, it was like looking at a ghost of the person, this beautiful, charming person that I fell in love with. The person that was sitting in front of me apologizing was really not that person at all. But I don't know how long-lived that was. I mean, it was probably 2 weeks. And then he was back. I don't know, but right up to me literally sitting on the plane, flying off. And my daughter says, like, such a funny thing, and I don't want to talk too much about her. She says, I have to tell you all, she supports me, and she's very proud of me, but she doesn't want to be a part of it. So I respect that, and she's actually too young to read the book. But we're taking off in the plane, and I'm getting messages like, I'll buy you a house, I'll buy you this, please don't leave, you can't leave me, I'm going to die without you, and it goes on and on and on. And she just says, my daughter, we like taking off, she goes, goodbye, fucking London. Like this. And it was just brilliant. I'm crying, and I was just like, yeah, whatever, okay, cool, done, you know. But it didn't stop there. I mean, the emails about how I lost out because he sold his company for so many £1 billion, and I lost out, and well, I mean, that carried on for months.
I mean, well, I need to get to the bottom of this. You have a person who abuses you, treats you badly, who does the things you write about in the book. They're so bad that you take 6 years to write a book about it. Here we are. And yet, when the proverbial shit hits the fan, we have this groveling figure. I'm sorry, I can't live without you, you're my person, pulling every single cheap trick out of the book. I mean, and the guy's lexicon, you just don't do this, you know. You'd think he'd kind of be like Darth Vader, like disappearing into the smog of the galactic cruiser. Instead, the guy's sending you these weepy emails. These
it went on and on.
Pathetic. I mean, really, we would sit there, and I mean, I've read quite a few of them.
One was weepy, the other one was blaming me, the other one was telling me how much money I've missed out on. It was kind of like a cycle. But I think if anybody knows more about narcissists or psychopaths or what's the other one, sociopath, you'll understand that this is what they're like. Maybe they just have short-term memory, I don't know.
My suspicion is that that there's more of them out there than we know, and that that this is not an isolated situation. Alcohol. We got to discuss alcohol.
Yeah.
We got to discuss alcohol. We drink too much. Alcohol is part of this story, and I'm going to let you talk about it.
It's hard to talk about alcohol. I was drinking a lot in London, and I'm still drinking quite a lot, but everybody has their own limits. Some of us like to think we don't, or we do, or we know our limits. Definitely alcohol fueled this, because when he wasn't drinking, he wasn't abusive, he wasn't saying the most absurd things to me, he wasn't swearing at me. And those days were incredible, or when we were just sharing a bottle of wine together, those days were incredible. But this just consistent, I mean, it's called a binge drinking alcoholic. The amount of alcohol this guy could consume and still walk straight, and sometimes still speak straight, was incredible. And I didn't realize that. You know, I didn't realize how much he could actually take. Because I'm used to us going out for lunch, which was pretty bad, Ron. But this was like 10 times that. And for days, or in the book I say, like by 11 o'clock, when I'm either getting a text from him or I'm not getting a text from him, from that communication, I know what's coming. And I know that he's going to say, I'll be back by 7 for dinner or 8. And then he just won't pitch till 2, 3 in the morning. And then there'll be all these texts about how he's so important, he's doing all these incredible business deals. whatever is happening. And then towards the end of the book, those business deals were something else. But yeah, that's my diary. I don't have any proof of a lot of stuff, but it's what I saw, what I heard, what I saw in the text message, and yeah, my experience.
Hey, when you talk about something else, do we want to talk about what that something else was?
I know, read the book.
I think we can imagine, usually. The tipping point. What was the tipping? What was the point when the scales fell from your eyes and you said, you know what?
He actually kicked me out because I'd gone out with my friends the one night, and he tried to stop me and wanted to cook me sea bass or something, some big deal about sea bass. And I said, well, can we have sea bass on the Thursday night instead of the Wednesday night? And that wasn't okay. And then, how dare you go out? You're just living in my house. You should do what I say. And obviously I went out, and obviously I got home quite late, a little bit tipsy myself. And then, yeah, I was kicked out the next day. You can't live in my house, I'm breaking up with you, blah, blah, blah. And he came home from work with a friend. And he was telling me this, I need to move out and it's over or whatever. And the friend was kind of waiting downstairs. And I was quite upset, I was crying. And my daughter was in the bath. And I asked him, just before you go, wherever you're going, please just ask her to get out the bath and get into bed, and I'll come sort out soon. And she said to him, no, I don't want to listen to you, I'm waiting for my mom. And he obviously told her to get out the bath or whatever, and she said, no, I'm not going to listen to you. And he swore to her. And when that happened, that was it. Yeah. Because up until then, a lot of people asked me, what about your daughter? I'm a strict mom, she was in bed by 7, she was asleep, she's a heavy sleeper. A lot of this happened late at night, even though she picked up a lot of stuff and said really interesting things to me, like, I told you had a black heart. They're really formidable things that she said to me. But generally what she saw of living in London was good. There was a lot of entertainment, Legoland, all of that kind of stuff that was happening during the day, but a lot of the other stuff was happening at night.
Is it fair to say that there's certain behavior you permit towards yourself that you would not permit towards your daughter?
Look, I was close already. I mean, I planned after 2 weeks of being there that I was going to leave him. It was that was my first thought, I'm going to have to leave this, but I'll leave when it suits me or when I can provide a place for my daughter to stay. Everybody says, why didn't you leave sooner? I could have lived in a bedsit in London, but not with my daughter. I had a support system back in South Africa. Why would I have done that in London? It didn't make sense. That was the final straw, of course.
I'd like to open this up. I think there'll probably be vigorous questions headed your way, but I thought there's one last, as I was driving here, I thought, on a more serious, well, this is a serious note, but yet more serious note would be, if someone or someone sitting in this audience, or someone on Facebook is in the middle of this, or starts to think maybe I'm in the middle of this, because that's what it'd be more like, it sounds like. Maybe the behavior possibly is not what I would like and not what is right. And maybe I should be thinking about a plan B or an exit plan. For someone who's not sure, or someone who's in this relationship right now, what would you say to them right now?
I want to be very careful because I really don't want to be this kind of rallying, marching women for, against abuse against women. I don't want to be that person. I feel very strongly about the topic, but it's not my forte and I don't know enough about it and I don't want to go and study it. I'll say read my book. Just read my book, leave me alone. I don't want to get involved. I'm not equipped to get involved. But for me, the whole idea that people don't talk about things, that's when you cover stuff up. So if everybody talks about stuff, and that's why I wrote the book, and get it out in the open, to speak out of the house. Our parents' generation never spoke out of the house. She never knew what was going on. So I think just start speaking openly about it, which it's not always possible because, then your partner might find out. Look, and other people keep on telling me, oh, I've got a book. And I'm like, well, write it. Everybody's got a book. Write it, because that's the only way you're ever going to get it published. And there are people in this room that have stories 10 times worse than what I'm telling. My story pales in comparison. But I wrote the book and I wrote the diary and I've shared it. Everybody, in fact, I want to talk about one thing, this word brave. quite a few people have told me tonight and the last 2 weeks, you're very brave to tell the story. And it's so funny because while I was going through it, nobody ever said to me, be brave. You know, brave for telling a story? Really, guys, come on. The women in Rock Girl, the NGO I work with, and India Baird is here. She's the women champion who started it, who's done incredible stuff for girls in Manenberg, and I've been to the school. These girls are brave. These girls deal with far worse than I've ever dealt with every single day of their lives. Yet people are saying I'm brave because I exposed myself and I wrote about something, you know, bad language and somebody shouting at me. It's odd. So next time somebody is in a situation, whatever, maybe encourage them to be brave in that situation. Maybe that's what has to happen. Instead of saying you're brave to leave, only once you've done something you're brave.
It's great. Does anyone have any questions? Can you? I can't get the.
I'll bring a mic.
Okay. Perfect. The wandering mic.
I'm very interested to know when you met him for the very first time, that very first instant of contact, what was your intuitive response to him? And if it was negative, did you ignore it?
I totally ignored it. I met him, I was introduced through somebody else I was seeing, and the two of them had a discussion about the girl he was with, and it was disparaging and the remarks were stupid. And in that moment I thought, I really don't like how these guys behave.
Well,
Exactly.
yeah.
Months later, it was I think a year and a half later, I started communicating with him and actually met him again. And that's what Annika was talking about earlier, is your women's intuition. And you've missed the one thing. It's intuition, the heart, and the head. There are three things involved. And, you know, I think we've forgotten to really listen to our intuition. But the heart, I fell madly in love with this man. I was in love with this guy. That was the hard thing to stop, to enable me to leave.
And if I may just add to that, I think possibly it sounds as if you, the power of your rational being overlaid the instinctual response, and you allowed love to surface in a way which wasn't warranted, I think, by your initial reaction.
Yeah, but who doesn't want to fall in love?
Well, you paid the price.
Yeah, I did. I paid 6 months price for it, but the good times were incredible. That's all I can say. He wasn't a total monster. So was it worth it? Wasn't it worth it? I'm sitting here today and I might help 20 women in this room. Then it's worth it to tell my sad story.
Anyone else?
I'm loud, it's fine.
Okay.
Sam, but you are brave though. So you undercut the writing of it by saying, you know, I'm just telling a story. But it is a very brave thing, especially if you look at the responses you got from your colleagues and friends and people in the industry saying, oh, don't do this. You know, this is going to impact on your reputation. So first of all, I just want to say you are brave, so don't take that away from yourself. But secondly, how long did it take you to recover afterwards, or have you recovered? Is it how does it feel talking about it right now to a crowd of people?
Well, this
And be
is
questioned
Claire.
about it.
He was my first editor. And
An excellent
thank you.
editor, by the way.
Excellent.
My editor.
Yeah, she just seemed to tell the story back to me in such a beautiful fashion, or a better way, that I was convinced it was a good book. Claire, if you remember that time, I got back to South Africa, I was freelancing, and I wrote it at night, between as soon as my daughter went to bed until 2 in the morning, and I wrote and transcribed all the bullshit, basically. And it was just boring. Anyway, I put it into a format, and you were the first one to edit it, and then it sat on my computer for a long time. Straight after that, actually, I went to walk the Camino, which was fantastic. I had a rare opportunity where, for the first time ever, my daughter was going to her father. For 4 weeks, the schools got extra long holiday because of the World Cup. I wanted to get as far away from soccer as I could, and I ended up in Spain, and they won the final on the last night of the Camino, so that's how far that went. But I had an opportunity to walk the Camino, and yeah, stepping him out my system was formidable. And also at one point in the Camino, you carry stones for things that you want to leave or set aside in your life. And I carried 3 stones, and the one, it's in the book, I'm telling my book. The one is for the guy who introduced us, who was my initial bad boy I fell in love with, and for him, and then for my father as well. And at that time, that was incredible healing experience. And then after that, it was a bit difficult when I had to rehash it with another editor. And now, again, it just feels like such a long time ago. And that's why Ron and I can laugh about it again. In the beginning, we laughed about it because he just said, I can't believe you, of all people, Sam, landed yourself in this stupid situation. And now I can laugh about it as well because it was a long time ago. I think whatever it takes. But you have to move on. Don't sit here and go, I've got a book about my terrible relationship or whatever, and sit there and be that person. Write it, get it over, done with, or do whatever you want to do. Write it and burn it. I don't know. Just get over it, because you can't. If I hadn't got over it, I would have let him control me still. So, yeah, I think the Camino really, if anybody has the opportunity to go with the Camino, it's incredible. And much easier than Kilimanjaro.
If he contacted you now, what would you do?
Call Ron. I think you probably will at some stage. I don't know if he'll ever come across a book. My intention is never to send it. In the early days, I wanted to send the book to his ex-wife. I mean, I thought that would be really funny, but I don't think that's funny anymore.
Your lawyer would not find that very funny.
I don't think that's funny anymore. Also in the book, I gave away his final Twickenham rugby tickets to the hobo who I'd made friends with. I thought that was funny as well, but some of you guys might not find that funny. Yeah, he probably will at some stage, I don't know, or he won't. I don't know. I hope he doesn't. I've got no business there.
Do you think you could be friends in the future?
No, I don't. I choose my friends carefully now. To answer your question.
So do you feel like you need to warn other women against him?
No, it's not my thing. It's not my job. I think my job here is to publish this book. I hope. Maybe I changed him, You always want to change people. Maybe by leaving him I changed him. I mean, I doubt it. But no, that's not my business. There's nothing. If he was in Cape Town, if it was part of my group of friends, I probably would have made such a big stink of it, people would have known. But, I mean, I never shut up. So I think a few people in our circle in London knew that I was writing a book, but the book never went anywhere, and now it has. So I've contacted one woman who was in a very similar situation, and she actually works with in a rehab center, and she said, please send me the book, I think we could use it. So I've contacted her, but she won't have contact. No.
I could say that Claire and I, we used to do an online creative writing course, and Claire still does it. And it's excellent. It's an excellent course, and I've since passed on to Mike Nickel. One of the things that pushed us is that how many essays written by students, female students, women, were about abuse. It was so shocking, and there's no way it was supposed to be fiction, but you could write about memoir, you could write about experiences, and it was so often people were joining the online creative writing course to share these stories and write about them. And I remember saying to Claire, if you just sit down and think, that online course, Sam, people we know, you sit down and just do a little basic math, the percentages of women out there who are out there dealing with the psycho-charmings of the world is fairly high. And if you have to be a guy, you know how many psycho-charmings are out there. Well, we just see them as psychos. And women see them as charming, I suppose. Any other question?
Shall I take your mic?
No, sure.
Thanks. I've always admired women for their intuition, to see through guys' games. And so, and there are a lot of good guys out there, but unfortunately, I think a bit insecure and boring sometimes. So, I'm wondering, have you put I have my own theories, but have you put your finger on it? What is this X factor that this guy had? that worked so well?
I think it was a combination of things. Just to stand up for myself. I mean, I did marry a really amazing man once, and he's still the father of my child, and he's lovely. But for me, he's not who I wanted to be with. So it's not like I've had this this past of going through wrong people. They're like really bad boys. Although I have, I've gone through that whole thing. We're all fallible. Let me get this person a chance. You know, he maybe doesn't have anything materialistic, but maybe he's got a beautiful soul. You know, I have done that. I have dated. I think maybe I was in a space where I wanted to change so badly that this offered me the change. I think generally I'm a good judge of character, but this is it. Even strong women can land themselves in this situation, which is why I was so angry in the book. Like how I've seen my friends go through this, and I've also spent weekends and months with certain friends here tonight, encourage them to leave their put your hand up, leave their boyfriends, and then on the weekend they're convinced, and on our run they're going to leave him. And Monday what happens? They go back. And I actually at some point actually gave up on some friends. I just couldn't handle it. I didn't have the empathy that now I have, because I was like that. I stuck it out, and I couldn't leave until I could leave, until the hook had been broken. So that's also another reason for other people to read the book. Even if you've never been through this situation, maybe you can understand a friend more, you know, who is going through it. But these people are incredibly charming, and apparently somebody wrote on my Facebook page the other day that she too is an incredibly strong, sort of quite an arsey woman, and her ex-husband was like this, and apparently they go for strong women because it's a lure, it's a challenge. So yeah, I guess I was just unlucky for that, but I promise you every 3 days were wonderful. So was I going to give it up? Was I going to... One of my friends came over to London and said, "Oh, please, what are you complaining about? He's got a beautiful house, just stick it out. Come on, he's going to marry you." I'm not friends with her anymore.
Just a question over here.
Sam, I just wanna ask, where did your turning point come in terms of your healing? I know you went out or you got out, but in your mind, because this involved some insanity and it was a lot of emotional and mental trauma, if I may use that word. So when did you know, even after you left, when did you know for sure that I'm healed, I'm completely healed, and I'm back to my normal self, myself?
I don't know if I'll ever be back to my normal self, because I think I do change, and I write clearly in the front of the book, the person I was then is not the person I am now, or the person I'm becoming, because I think it's for all of us, we should continuously work on ourselves. And so through other relationships, the trigger points are there, boy. They are so bright, and they just fly at you. And so there's always going to be healing. I know my anger got me through it, and I know when I got back to South Africa I was incredibly angry, and I actually lost some friends. Some friends just couldn't deal with it because I was also so outwardly spoken about stuff and inequality, and you know, don't let your husband speak to you like that or whatever. I mean, I definitely lost a few friends, but the friends in this room are also friends who've stuck by me through it. You know, it's uncomfortable to have a friend who is kind of quite aggressive and quite mad and quite traumatized. I was traumatized. It's uncomfortable to have that girl around you. So thanks to those friends who, you know, sat down and had a glass of wine with me and kind of heard my story and didn't judge me too harshly on it. Because also if you're a victim, you're not such a cool friend to have around, are you? You know, it's hard to call myself a victim. Yeah, it's difficult.
Two questions over here.
Sam, I'm one of the fortunate ones that have read the book, and I thought I wanted to ask you, what are you hoping a man could take away from reading your book?
A man or a woman, Bryn, and I mean, you made a very important comment the other day to me. He was texting me while he read the book. He stole it off my dining room table, by the way. I said, "You can't take this book, it hasn't been released yet." And anyway, Sam, I'm laughing, it's so damn funny. Oh my gosh, I'm crying, it's so sad. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. You know, I mean, this was a running commentary, like till 11 o'clock at night. And then you said a very important thing to me the other day. You said, even you, in your relationship, would like to learn from the book. And you said, well, maybe every woman should read this book to try and help them get out of a similar situation. You commented that every man should read it too.
Yeah.
Because I think we all just have to take responsibility for what we say to other people, what we do to other people, and how we treat other people. And I think really all over the world, if you even notice how your friends treat you, some people, like really on a WhatsApp, sorry, I can't make dinner at the 11th hour, it's not okay. You know what I'm saying? So it's just about being really responsible for your actions and consequences to your actions. I'm a great believer, if you treat me like an arsehole, if you act like an arsehole, you get treated like one. That's my healing still. I need to get over that. But yeah, I think just to really look at the relationship we're in and what are we actually saying to each other.
My question is about what you call the psychopath. His previous relationships, did they all follow the same pattern as the one that you had? Or was it a specific combination of the two of you that led to his behavior?
What I could tell from the stories I'd heard about his previous girlfriend, yeah, there was a pattern. She was much younger than him, so he definitely controlled her. And eventually I got to speak to his ex-wife on the phone at a crucial point where like the shit had hit the fan. And she answered the phone because she didn't recognize my South African accent. And she told me later, and she called me back, because in between he came home and threatened to call the police and kick me out of his house. I found some information on his laptop. Yes, I did horrendous things. I checked his phone and went into his laptop. I became like Inspector Clouseau. I mean, it's incredible. A woman's intuition, you know exactly where to look for stuff. And I've never done that before, and I refuse to ever check anybody's phone again. I mean, I'm not that person. But I was like a caged animal. I was mad. I was insane. And anyway, I spoke to his ex-wife, and she told me the most horrendous stories about how he'd behaved. So, no, it wasn't just me. It definitely wasn't. And actually, to get back to the other story about why, even though my intuition told me he had a dark soul, he told me a lot of his indiscretions. So I thought, here he is, he's trying to make amends, he's being honest and open and repentive about what he's done and what wasn't right about it. So when somebody tells you that, you think, well, they've learned from it and they won't do it again. But yeah, they don't change. And I mean, what I needed to finally understand was that I was with a deeply flawed person. And even though my behavior wasn't great, I mean, that is who I was with. So that's the decision. You either stick with it or you leave, and I left.
But can I just ask a question here? I mean, we talk about a deeply flawed person, and I think that's where that gentleman...
And then you, the last question.
That gentleman was also alluding to it, and you say he had a flawed disposition or was a person. Where is the line that maybe some of these people do have psychological problems and imbalances that can actually be treated? I'm not sure how, through medications or counselings or whatever, but is there not especially in today's world, with all the pressures and some of the terrible behaviours we're seeing from mainly men, but also often from women, that there's creeping into our societies, because I'm not only referring to South Africa, I'm talking globally, that I think it's a question that there are actual psychological diseases or problems or mental problems that people have.
Look,
and
all
their
I know
behavior is as a consequence of that. And
I'm not a therapist and I can never pass judgment on the question you've asked, but what I know is every second person nowadays is bipolar. So I don't know if bipolar is just a good word to describe their bad behavior, you know. Secondly, I did do a bit of research about psychopath. I mean, I labeled him as a psychopath. Whether or not he is, I don't know. But it does say that men, especially over the age of 50, sometimes do redeem themselves. Sometimes do turn. And that I found quite interesting. Although, I mean, that made no difference to me. You know, I knew what I was dealing with. Professionally, I don't know. If you read the psychologist report, it's very interesting, even though I don't like all of it. But maybe it's also because of the Johnny Depp thing, because of social media, and because of recording devices in our hands and text messages and the way we communicate, we're just seeing more of it. It's more blatant and it's more provable. Maybe it was always happening. I don't know.
Sorry, I have to say something. I have to just say that it's
Then you really are the last person.
and I'm loud, so it's fine. It's a very compelling read, because a lot of the questions have been very serious, and it is very serious. It is very serious. And Sam knows that I'm married to a very difficult man, and Sam and I have been on runs where she has helped me. And this book has helped me. But I read it one night, and I couldn't stop reading it. I read it through the night. It is a very compelling read. So when Sam is so self-disparaging, and she says, oh, it's my diary, it's boring, it's monotonous, it isn't.
Thank you, Gina.
That's a very compelling book.
Thank you.
I think that's a great point to end for the evening. Thanks so much, everybody.